Microsoft just revealed their backwards compatibility plans for the Xbox Series X, and it's going to make your games look a whole lot better. One of the defining characteristics of the Xbox brand, in my opinion, is that Microsoft has done a fantastic job throughout its history of bringing legacy titles to new or current generation consoles, meaning if you have an Xbox original, bringing games to Xbox 360 and 360 to One, you guys understand. And Microsoft is not letting that legacy die with the Xbox Series X, and they are talking new information today about how they are going to bring older titles up to speed for the Xbox Series X. And so they are coming out and very specifically saying, hey, look, these games and titles are going to have full access to the CPU, GPU, and SSD. Not all that surprising. Microsoft is trying to give them as much bandwidth and potential as possible, and they're just coming out and saying, hey, yeah, that is actually the plan. No surprise there. But what is really, really nice is that Microsoft is confirming that backwards compatible games will be able to run at higher, more steady frame rates while rendering at their maximum resolution while preserving visual quality. Now that is key, the last part there, because what somebody could do is say, hey, look, a game only ran at 720p or something even lower. We'll just double the pixels. That's a real easy way to boost the resolution, but it really doesn't look all that good, right? You get some blurring, you get some fuzziness. Things just aren't quite as crisp because it doesn't perfectly scale 1-to-1 like that, especially if you aren't going from a native 16:9 ratio to the newer stuff. That being said, Microsoft is also coming out and saying that backwards compatibility titles will also have a new technique that they're introducing that is going to enable HDR support for titles that did not have HDR support because maybe HDR wasn't a thing. They have a new algorithm and way of processing these old titles that will allow the colors to pop and effectively, well, enable HDR. And they said they built a new HDR reconstruction technique that enables HDR support, and keyword here, without impacting performance. So it looks like it's a recompilation potentially of the game. We don't quite know all the details about how they're doing that, but if it's not impacting performance and you're getting pseudo HDR support, and as long as it's making things better, really hard to complain about that. And they said they also have new techniques that enable game developers to enable more backwards compatible titles to run at higher resolution. That is good. That means that they have, again, found new techniques and new ways to take older legacy titles, run them through some sort of fancy algorithm scripts or whatever it is, and they are going to run at a higher native resolution. That is a very, very good thing for people who are trying to bring their older titles onto their new generation consoles, because let's face it, resolutions are only getting higher, especially going from 1080p to 4K. If the textures are furry and and blurry, it's going to be a problem. I was trying to say fuzzy, not furry and blurry, but you know what? Furry and blurry works. So, and then they also say select backwards compatible titles to run at 4K, while others will experience double frame rates. And also select titles will go from 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second, or 60 frames per second to 120 frames per second. So what, in a nutshell, has Microsoft said? Hey, we're bringing backwards compatible titles to the Xbox Series X. No surprise there. It gets full access to the SSD, GPU, and everything else in between. That is always good, kind of assumed there. But new HDR techniques are going to bring HDR to games. Games are going to run at higher resolutions thanks to Microsoft's technology that they're introducing. And they're also going to have HDR support. Now, it's not every single title. Microsoft clearly has some sort of defined metrics about what games qualify for HDR support or higher resolution. And we'll find out, but I'm hoping that the big name titles, the ones that we love, the nostalgia factor, and I'm assuming that most Microsoft Studio titles should fall into that category. But this is just another little nugget about information about how things are going to work on the Xbox Series X. We're still missing some big information, primarily audio situation. We're still waiting on that. Obviously, price and pre-order dates, those things are still all out there. But backwards compatibility, at baseline, I think we all assume that, hey, if it ran on an older console, yeah, it'll just run on a Series X. And that is absolutely true, and that has not changed. But what they're changing is that it's not only going to run, it's going to run with HDR support potentially. It's going to run at double frame rate. It's going to run at higher resolution. These are all good things. For people who are deeply invested in the Xbox brand, your older games are going to look better, they're going to run better, and they're going to be just as fun as when you originally played them, and hopefully look just as good as when you're playing them on those older TVs too. So that is what you need to know about backwards compatibility titles on the next generation Xbox. We're going to be learning a lot more, I think, this month about Microsoft's plans for hardware and all that good stuff. We'll catch all of you right back here next time.